Hey guys, this is Chris, and today we're going to talk a little bit about wheel theory when it comes to selecting the right wheels for the car that you're going to be running. When you're looking at putting, doing a wheel swap for racing, you're going to want to look at the car that you're building, and you're also going to want to look at the track that you're running on, because sometimes you might be limited. For the amount of size that you have, how much clearance you have. Like, I'd have a hard time getting a bigger wheel on this car. So these are the actual, these fronts are the small size wheels, and then this is a medium size wheel, but it is medium wide. The one I generally go with are the medium size. See, they're the same. Medium. Just standard width, and then there also is a bigger size, which is like the rear wheel on a Way Too Fast is like the large wheel. So now, what you're looking at, usually, in the real world, what you're thinking about when you put a bigger wheel on a vehicle, like let's say you're putting 38s or 40s on a big truck. You're going to be worried about the amount of power it takes to turn those big wheels. Now, that's not a problem here because the car itself is being forced by gravity. So you don't have to worry about the force that it takes to turn the bigger wheel. The limitation that is on the wheel is the friction between the axle and the hub of the wheel. These wheels will hit, I believe it's approximately 11 to 12,000 RPMs when they're going down the track. So when they go down the track, they're going to hit their maximum RPM. A small wheel is going to hit that maximum RPM faster than a bigger wheel is. So in other words, it's going to accelerate quicker. So if you're running on a 10-foot long track, yeah, run the small wheels because they're going to accelerate really fast. If you're running on a 40-foot track, run this size wheel, or even bigger if you can find them, because the maximum RPM will be the same on a small wheel as on a bigger wheel. So with with both wheels turning at 11,000 RPM, the bigger wheel is going to be going. The car with the bigger wheel is going to be going faster. So that's kind of the deal with size. Now, I tend to just like, the medium-sized wheel. If I can run them front and back, that's what I do. On this car, I didn't really have the room to put the bigger wheels on the front because I would have been up through the hood. So I went with a smaller wheel, and hey, it worked. It worked fine. Now the thing that we had to think about is what type of track are you running as far as your preparation of the wheels. Now, in straight line drag style racing, you want your wheel to be just on knife edge. In other words, you want to be running on the inside edge of that wheel. So in other words, you can sand this surface flat and then sharpen the inside edge, sand the inside edge flat also, and that way you have just a knife edge on the back, and you can camber the wheels in, which is a negative camber, and the car will be running just on that very edge. So there's virtually no, as little friction between the track and the wheel as possible. Is getting it on that knife edge. Now, is that good on open track racing? Well, I don't necessarily think so. I don't really think it hurts the car to run on the actual flat of the wheel on an open track, because when a car comes down straight and hits a turn, it's sliding. Now, if you're on a knife edge, that car might just go right straight into the wall because there's no side-to-side friction. on the wheel. So I actually kind of think on an open track car, it's okay to not run negative camber. In other words, just get this surface nice and round and smooth, and leave it flat. Now that's my theory. You guys can argue in the comments if you want, but because I think you actually want a little bit of side grip going into a turn. Now, that's just me, but yeah. So another thing is with drag style racing, you definitely want your wheels to be outside of the body of your car, because you will, if your car runs up against the edge of the track, if this is the edge of the track, if your car runs on the edge of the track, you've got this whole surface here slowing your car down. But if it's hitting against the wheel, and your wheel is already spinning, and it's angled up, so it's just, your wheel is just hitting on the very bottom right here, you'll have that tiny little bit of friction between the wall and your wheel. So it's not so bad. So that's another reason why you want to think about drag style racing to have negative camber, and because this portion of your wheel will be what touches the wall. So you won't be scrubbing speed by your body rubbing. Now here again, with open track racing, I think it's actually smart to have your wheel about flush, kind of like that. You want it sticking out, but you really don't want it sticking out very far, because of all the contact involved. You don't want your car to take a hit like here and just mash this wheel in really bad, and that way your track is going to be completely screwed up. So you actually kind of want to protect your wheels. With drag racing, you don't have to worry about that so much, but with the open track racing, yeah, it actually has to be a concern. The wheels, I think, should stick out just a little, but not too much with open track racing, because you want to keep those wheels protected. Now, when it comes to axle tubes, I have theories about that. I just made up a few. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, if I can get this to focus. I actually round over the ends of the axle tubes, and I do that by hand with a file. And because I want the smallest surface here possible for, if the wheel should go in and run against the end of the axle, which it shouldn't, I want to reduce that surface as much as possible. Now, the thing you need to think about that you don't think about very much is this nail head, especially if you're running negative camber. In other words, if you've got your wheel cocked out like that, the wheel is going to be forced out against that nail head. And if your car if it's set up right anyway, your wheel is going to be running against that nail head. So that nail head has to be pretty darn good. Or, as I've seen guys do, and the popular thing to do is just to have a custom, is to put like a little bead on the end there, or whatever, for your wheel to run against something very slick. So that's what you're up against. That's something you don't think about very much, is that nail head. But yeah, that's a very important factor in your wheels, because your wheel because that's actually the surface that your wheel is running against. And as far as the wheels themselves, just because you have a set of FTEs or whatever, that doesn't mean they're going to be, oh yeah, I have FTEs, they're going to be super fast. That's not the case. Your wheels still need to track very true. You can see I just give that a good spin, and there's virtually no wobble in that wheel at all. Any side to side movement in a wheel, you're losing speed, and because that wobble can translate to the car, and it's just it's going to make a mess. So you want your wheels to spin just as true as possible, and that's really what you're looking for. And now you can correct a little bit of wobble out of the wheel by sanding it, but I just prefer to start with wheels that run true. It just makes your life that much easier. And so, what I'm up against next is, I made slightly longer axle tubes. And I mean, like, these are like 19.5 millimeter axle tubes as opposed to 19 millimeter. So, yeah. I'm getting right down to the nitty gritty. This is my new set of wheels. This is a wheel that was on the car, that was a good wheel that was on the car before. And I'll be gluing them in, and I'll be sanding them here very soon. But like I said, I was asked to do this video on wheel theory, and I could talk probably a lot more on this. If anybody has specific questions. One thing I did want to say too, I like the FTE wheels because they're very lightweight. But the fact is, if you want to run other wheels work just as well with FTE axles, with nickel-plated axles. In other words, you can run your basic 5-spoke wheels, and they run great with the nickel-plated axles. Now, I know guys that like working with the stock axles and try getting them polished up, and they can work well too. But here again, it's just easier to start with nickel-plated because you're starting off with something good. But you don't have to stay with FTEs. The nickel-plated axles are really what you're after. I like running them because I've had good luck with them, and they are lightweight and they do work well. But you don't have to. That's kind of the point here. Just if you want something, if you don't like the look of the FTE wheel, you can run whatever you want as long as it's spinning true. And I would recommend that you're running nickel-plated axles. So yeah, I hope that answers some of the questions. Like I said, I will probably be gluing in my new wheels very soon and sanding them, and I will give you guys an update on Crush here when it's a little further along. But I did want to answer these questions. I don't know if I answered any questions or just made more questions, but yeah. So that's kind of my theory on wheels. It's the RPM that they hit that is the limiting factor. It's not really the size. So take a look at the body that you're running and mainly the track that you're racing on. I like these medium wheels, but that's just me. It's kind of the middle path kind of idea, because they tend to work pretty well across the board, but I might be sacrificing something. If I was running on a shorter track, yeah, I probably should put smaller wheels on. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. This is Chris. I will see you in lane 2.